Today on TimesCast, President Obama wins support abroad for the START nuclear treaty with Russia, but at home he struggles to get Republican cooperation. A first look at Tuesday's Science Times, killing the invasive lionfish for sport.
This is the third stage of the lionfish derby.
And Sunday's Times explored how high schools are fighting for the attention of their tech-obsessed students. Reporter Matt Richtel answers readers' questions. President Obama and his administration spent the weekend advocating for the START Treaty, a nuclear arms control agreement between Russia and the United States.
The idea is simple. As the two nations with over 90% of the world's nuclear weapons, the United States and Russia have a responsibility to work together to reduce our arsenals.
So, Peter, President Obama was in Portugal this weekend at the NATO summit, and both privately and publicly, a lot of allies issued support for the new START treaty. So where do we go from here with this treaty?
Well, this is a summit that was actually better for President Obama than his Asia trip, where he didn't get a lot of what he wanted. It looked like the European leaders and the Russian leader, Dmitry Medvedev, wanted to give kind of a boost to President Obama. So they all kind of came out both on their own and at the instigation of the administration to say, we think this treaty is important to national security, we think the Senate ought to approve it. Whether that has any impact on Senate Republicans, that's another guess.
So the Democratic hope that this will actually get passed this year, is it still realistic?
It's a long shot at this point, unless they can convince Senator John Kyle, the number 2 Republican in the Senate, to go along with it. It seems like a long road to go to get 67 votes. Remember, a treaty requires 2/3 vote, so it's not enough just to have Democrats to support it.
If it does pass, what does this say about, or even if it doesn't pass, what does this say about bipartisanship going forward in Washington?
Well, in a way, President Obama has made this a test of his own capacity in this post-election period where he's not perceived to be very strong. If he wins, he's going to use as an argument that bipartisanship is alive and that his capacity as a leader is alive. If it goes down, I think it sends the next Congress that starts in January off on a rather sour note in terms of conflict between the Democrats and Republicans over where to take the country.
In Tuesday's Science Times, Eric Olson will explore efforts to halt the spread of the invasive lionfish.
This is a lionfish. It comes from the Indo-Pacific Ocean around Southeast Asia and northern Australia. Although attractive, as an invasive species, it has become one of the biggest threats facing sea life on Caribbean coral reefs.
Once it becomes dominant on the reef, there's no stopping it. It'll just spread and spread, throughout the Keys, and you've lost all of the groupers and the snappers and your kind of complex, ecologically diverse ecosystem.
Gotta go, Bubba, gotta go. On a recent Saturday, I joined a team of 3 guys from Melbourne, Florida, who call themselves the Lionfish Hunters. I'm in the Florida Keys to take a look at how managers are trying to deal with this flamboyant-looking pest. We're about 60 miles north of Key West. We are going lionfish hunting. This is the third stage of the lionfish derby, the effort to use divers to get out and try to get rid of this invasive species, which has begun to show up in great numbers here down in the Keys.
I grew up on the water, and I have a wife and a son and one on the way, and I hope to let my kids grow up on the water like I was raised. If you get 20 or 30 of them a weekend and you're just doing your part to help out, maybe save a species, I think there's something cool behind that.
And the Times' Matt Richtel spent 4 months at Woodside High School in Silicon Valley to report on the many ways students are distracted from learning. He answers reader questions about his story.
Hi, it's Matt Richtel with the New York Times, and I'm responding to questions about our article Sunday on Your Brain on Computers that discussed how heavy technology use is affecting young people's behavior and even their brains. The first comes from Michael in Florida, and he writes, how could parents let their kids send 27,000 texts a month, shut down that account? Michael, here's a little anecdote. A young woman at Woodside High told me that she's allowed 3,000 texts each month under the plan her parents bought for her. And she closely monitors how many texts she sends. And when it gets to $2,999, she stops so that they don't see the bill go up. In other words, very tough to police. Tougher than, say, the television of old, which leads to question number 2. And that comes from Jesse in New York. And he writes, sorry, but I don't see the problem. My parents were worried I watched too much TV and listened to too much rock and roll. Jesse, here's the distinction. You could not pick that big CRT tube up and sneak it under your covers. And I would imagine that even had you put the TV under your covers where your parents couldn't see, you didn't talk to the TV, and it certainly didn't talk back. And if it did, there weren't 3 other conversations going on digitally at the same time. That is a material difference, researchers say, from the current technology, which is ubiquitous and it's interactive, and it keeps them much less focused than technologies of old. Last one. A lot of readers wrote in, and I won't give you a specific question, but the paraphrase of it is, you tell us that we're having trouble focusing. How dare you write 4,000 words? How can we possibly keep our attention focused that long? Here's the glib answer is read a paragraph, tweet, and then repeat. And then the slightly less glib answer is, it's my job to keep your attention. And there's a lot of media competing for it these days, and hopefully we did it with this story.
Join us again tomorrow for TimesCast.